Hi, everyone. My name's Kristine, CEO of LMVA Consulting, where we love connecting people. And if this is the first time you're joining us, we're excited to be hosting lives with people that we know that we think that you should get to know. Today, we're excited to have David Falk, partner of Facilitated Solutions and president of the ADR Institute of Manitoba. ADR Institute of Manitoba is a not-for-profit affiliated with ADR Canada that provides leadership in the development and promotion of dispute resolution services in Canada. Hi, David.
Hey.
Welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Kristine. It's lovely to be here.
You know, we appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. We're really excited, LMVA and myself, to be collaborating again with you this year.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past, for anyone that doesn't know, I've worked with David from you've done a lot of things within the community, from speaking from various professional development sessions, mainly in my experience for accountants, but I know there's lots of other industries out there you've spoken for. And some staff training and LeaderCast. You were a live keynote for my first LMVA event. And then also, I know that you did TED Talks in the community a few years back at the convention center. So,
TEDx.
I know. And it was really exciting to, over the years, keep seeing you back at different events and reconnecting. Now, this time it's with ADRIM's upcoming Conflict Resolution Day on 2020. So for everyone who's joining us, I'm looking forward to our 20 minutes together. We're going to get to learn a little bit more about what David does, how you help people. We'll talk a little bit about Conflict Resolution Day and why it's important for facilitators, leaders, and speakers to attend, and organizers, of course. And so for those who are joining us live, we invite anyone who's joining us to ask questions, and we're going to try and answer those questions as we're able to. Okay, so let's just kick it off, David, by let's talk about Facilitated Solutions and how you help organizations.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Facilitated Solutions, we're a group of mediators and conflict management specialists that, bottom line, help people prevent, manage, and resolve conflict. Really focused in the workplace space, though we do venture out beyond workplaces in some certain special situations. And so that's the gist of our work, of helping people have difficult conversations and figure out how to get unstuck and help their teams really thrive and increase kind of their team capacity or resilience. And then on the other side of the mediator world is the work that we do more on the prevention side of doing speaking engagements and corporate trainings, really helping people be inspired and equipped so that they don't need our services, right? So that they don't need to call the mediators, being able to build the capacity in their teams and in their leadership skill sets to be able to lead effectively and be able to lean into the tough conversations that one needs to have. So I'm a big believer that leaders, bottom line, their reputations is largely determined by how they handle the tough conversations. So that's what we serve to kind of equip people with.
Well, and being in various roles, there's so many people that deal with difficult conversations. No matter how big or small, we still have to deal with conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pretty universal skill set. And what I love about our work is that while I primarily work in the workplace setting, the crossovers are so immediate. So people come up to me afterwards and go, you know what, this is so helpful at work. And I'm finding this really helpful at home with my family, right? So there's communication skills, conflict management skills, they are so universally applied.
And intertwined.
Yeah.
And what about ADR Institute of Manitoba? What does that stand for?
Yeah. So it's the Alternative Dispute Resolution Institute of Manitoba. As you said in your intro, we're a local not-for-profit affiliate of our national body. And it is the premier kind of national body where people like myself, professional mediators, kind of hang our hats professionally. It's the place in which you can receive credentialing. So if you're like me and want to have a certain standard of practice seen across the country, it's a place where you can go and receive that external professional validation that what you're doing is good work, because mediation is still kind of an unregulated industry. So anybody can go out there and say, I'm a mediator. And yet, as the profession evolves, there is an organization such as ADRIC and its local affiliates, and locally here it's ADRIM, the local Manitoba Institute, that are kind of raising the bar and setting the professional standards for this emerging profession. So it does training, it does certification, ethics, and all that good stuff of any kind of professional association.
Well, and it's so important to have that regulation and standard, especially with some of the conversations and mediation situations that you may even deal with as well.
Yeah, it is when you start professionalizing the work, right? This is a tricky area to professionalize, because at one level, as we we're talking earlier, it is like this is just humans being humans trying to have difficult conversations. So are you going to regulate how people, do conversations in their families, right? And so there's this interesting tension in the field between the need for professionalization when you start throwing commerce in it, and this is people's professional business, versus honoring and validating traditional practices and wisdoms, because every culture has embedded in it mechanisms for resolving disputes, whether that's deferring to the wisdom of elders or whatever, right? So it's an interesting thing of, yes, there's a need for this type of organization, and not to marginalize or diminish kind of the deep community and cultural practices that exist, in Canada here, but also around the world. So it's an interesting tension.
Oh, no, I could imagine. I could imagine. So this year you guys are hosting Conflict Resolution Day 2021. Is this an annual event that you host? Okay.
Since 2005, there's been something called Conflict Resolution Day. It's the third Thursday of October, and it was launched in the United States by our kind of sibling organization on the state side called the Association of Conflict Resolution. And it's kind of since gone global since over the years, in terms of other countries kind of adopting and celebrating on the third Thursday of the year, Conflict Resolution Day, where we kind of lift up the importance of the peaceful resolution of conflict. And we're doing our event on the Wednesday, the third Wednesday of October, because, hey, that's when we could get our speaker booked to celebrate this. And this is our first kind of more conference. We've done kind of more professional development events in the past, but this is something that's open to the whole public. You don't have to be a mediator or a conflict resolution professional. You just have to have an interest in kind of how do we gather, how do we deal with conversations well, to show up and join us for this event.
Well, and that's amazing. And I mean, let's talk about your keynote, Priya Parker, who wrote The Art of Gathering. And why you chose her specifically for this event?
Sure. Well, hey, over the pandemic, we all go to our places to kind of stay sane. And one of the sources of inspiration for myself during this last 18 months has been Brene Brown. And I stumbled into her podcast. I'd read some of her books, obviously, given the nature of my profession, familiar with her work, but I stumbled into her new podcast that she's launched during this time. And I heard Priya Parker on one of those podcasts. I'm like, oh my goodness, I love what she's talking about. She is a mediator and kind of master facilitator coming out of the New York area, a person who is kind of growing up in a cross-cultural environment of two very different cultures represented by her mom and dad, and kind of just navigating that as a child, and then from there into all kinds of interesting and challenging topics in university. I think part of her launching this is that they were about to begin some cross-cultural dialogue on September 10th back in the day, just before the Twin Towers came down. So that was the launch of, as a university student working in the field, interested in this, suddenly, boom, you're pushed into a whole new level of the complexity of holding space and having meaningful dialogue across differences. So yeah, when I heard her podcast and I heard the interview, I'm like, I need to get her book. So I got her book. And then I thought, hey, maybe, just maybe, she'd be willing to, come out. And these days with, doing things over virtual platforms like this, maybe we could actually get her to come to Manitoba virtually. And yes, I just feel like I've got the scoop of the century being able to pull this one off. So I'm just totally thrilled.
Well, and that's amazing. I mean, because, it really does matter how we gather, how we bring people together. And we think about our time being pulled in so many different directions, and everything's competing for it. And to be in groups, to be at events, to be at meetings that, intentionally, like, why are you gathering? Like, what is the purpose and what's the outcomes that you want out of it, and have that, structured in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just working with a client this over the last couple of months, and one of their meetings, I'm like, do you really need to have this meeting? Or could you actually cancel this meeting and replace it with an email? Because do you need to all actually sit around a boardroom and look at the numbers? Is that a meaningful, helpful conversation and use of your time? If yes, great. Have a clear rationale and purpose for that. But there's so many meetings that, and this is kind of, I think, one of the gifts of the pandemic is that it has disrupted the way we meet. And so it provides us a chance to reevaluate and go, okay, so what are the meetings, especially as we start moving back to, thinking about in person and returning to that, what are the old meeting structures that we want to maintain, that we want to build back? And what are the ones that we should have killed a long time ago? And the last 18 months helped us kind of shake out of, let go of some meetings that had really lost any sense of purpose or meaningfulness and were a grand waste of time and resources when you count up all the salaries sitting around the room going, is this good use of our time? So,
or even reshape how you meet. That's a really great opportunity to kind of revisit all of those processes. And so let's talk a little bit about what you envision for the day. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a big fan that when you're going online, you need to rethink. So it's 100% on Zoom. We're using the Whova platform, which is a really user-friendly, interactive platform. And for myself, doing training over the last year and a half online, a half day plenty. So we're doing a half day conference. We're not going to have people glued to their screens all day long. We're starting off at noon with a keynote interview with Priya Parker, where we have the delightful opportunity to just be in conversation, kind of like how you and I are doing it right now, where people can eavesdrop in on Priya having a conversation with myself about her work and about questions that are actually coming from her community. So right now, there's already 91 people that are registered for this conference that are on the platform. We're doing book clubs currently and ways for people to kind of read her book in advance and engage. And there's on the forum, there's a place where people can post, here's questions we want you to ask Priya. So we're going to have that interview be shaped in part by the feedback that we've received by those who are attending the conference. So that's our first hour. Then after the first hour of that conference, take a short little break, and then we're diving into some breakout sessions where people can choose one of 5 different concurrent sessions. And they're going to look at a number of kind of very specific either sector or areas of focus. So we have a panel of family practitioners that are looking at the art of gathering at the family table and looking specifically at like the challenge, the intersections between Priya's work and their work as family mediators and family parent coaches and stuff like that. Then we have 3 that are more general, kind of for leaders in general. One that you're doing, which I'm so thrilled about, which is looking at the art of gathering in hybrid formats, which is just a super unique challenge. So I'm looking forward to that one. I might actually be attending your session because I could use some tips.
I'm still thinking about those processes too.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got a month. We have Dave Dick and Janine Hoag-Sandsregret from Facilitated Solutions leading a session on the art of in-person gatherings, really gleaning from their many years as mediators and conflict management specialists, insights around when you bring people together, whether it's for a meeting or for a mediation, even in informal, tough conversation. What are some best practices, again, that intersect with what Priya is talking about? And then we have Wendy Lone from Achieve Leadership Center that is looking at the art of virtual gatherings of what have we been learning about how to work in these type of spaces as elegantly as possible. And then just as of yesterday, I'm in the process of confirming our 5th session, which is led by a fellow by the name of Adam Nippon, who is looking at the topic really around the art of intercultural gatherings. Whether you are at a workplace trying to struggle with what does reconciliation mean for us to engage the stuff that is increasingly on our consciousness as a nation around reconciling our history, which is not that pretty, and then figuring out what do we pragmatically do about that, or whether that is about more diverse conversations around a variety of different intercultural intersections. So that is our 5th concurrent. So we've got those 5. I think the challenge will be people choosing which one they want to be part of.
That's not a bad problem to have.
Not a bad problem. And then we close off with a closing panel. And the end of the day, we have a closing panel of a cross-section of leaders from our province. The panel's being hosted by Faith Fundal from CBC Radio 1, the
Fun.
up to speed host. Totally fun. I love Faith. And the panel's really going to be exploring this topic of, as we prepare and are in the process of returning to in-person gatherings, what are some of the insights and the challenges that folks are facing in that? So it's a chance for a group of leaders to talk about kind of where they're at and what they're working with, their great ideas and the things that are kind of kicking them in the pants that are still a bit of a struggle as we all kind of navigate this together. So, yeah.
And is the panel already set, or is that kind of still kind of a work in progress?
The panel's partially set. We have a number of folks that I've confirmed. So we have like Brenda Chris, who is the Vice President of Human Resources from Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries. If you haven't met Brenda before, she's gold. So she's kind of bringing in a little bit of the Crown Corporation world. We have, I'm drawing a blank here for a second. We have Dorota from Manitoba Museum, former executive director of IRCOM. And so she's new to her position as of about 3-4 months ago. And so a leader in the arts community now. We have Greg Evans from Evans Family Law, kind of coming in with the legal perspective. We have someone coming out of academia. So we're really bringing together a cross section of different organizational community leaders. So it's going to be a good conversation.
Well, and I think it goes back to that same point that everyone is dealing with this, no matter what organization you're from, what industry you're from. You know, we're hoping that everyone who attends will walk away with hopefully a chock full of resources and content and ideas to look at their own processes and organizations and apply to them.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of, if I get one good usable idea out of an event, I'm a happy camper, and I'm pretty sure that folks will get at least one good usable idea out of this event. Well, plus, you get a free digital download of Priya's book for signing up. So, hey, what's not to love? It's a very affordable conference, and it's an awesome resource. So,
no, that's great. And tomorrow is the last, or today's
Today is early bird deadline. So if you want in at an extremely affordable price, it's only $65 for this half day event. And like I say, you get a digital download of Priya Parker's book. And hey, if you don't make it today, it's not going to break your bank. I think it's like $85 after that. So, and you have up until the conference day to register. But if you register now, it gives you more time to actually join some of the online discussion forums and the book reads that are happening. So you can come in primed and ready to really maximize what you can gain from Priya and from the rest of the resource people that are reflecting on her work and how it applies to our work and our lives.
Well, and let's just talk about that for a second. So WOVA has been set up probably for about a month now, if I remember correctly. And the platform is open until December, where you want to just talk just quickly about that? Because I think this is another great feature, especially when you're learning, you're digesting, you're applying, and then you want to talk about it after.
Exactly. And so we're trying to figure out how to do, a virtual conference well and do it differently and kind of maximize the benefit. And so our membership, we're a relatively small organization. We've got about 100 members here in Manitoba that are mediators and lawyers and such. And we're looking at attracting more than that to the conference, because you don't have to be a member to join, right? Just have an interest in this topic and in this resource. And it's an opportunity to kind of build community, have people actually connecting on this online platform before the conference, then the actual conference day, of course. And then after the conference as well, we're keeping the site open until December. And in early December, we're actually going to have a closing, conversation over the noon hour where folks can kind of gather and reflect on some of their takeaways, things that they've actually applied, and kind of have one last kind of woohoo before we transition into preparing for a new year.
So. Well, and that's great, because I think sometimes we end up attending a lot of these events and then we walk away, and then the next week we're like, oh, what was that session I learned? What are those key takeaways? And it's really giving us that added incentive to stay engaged in that conversation, still participate, and then still stay connected with a group of people that you're meeting virtually. And, with conference and events these days, I mean, aren't we looking for meaningful connections?
That's the hope. That's the hope.
Great.
And hey, you can self-initiate on this site too, right? So you don't have to be totally dependent on what the planners do. You can self-initiate and going, I want to meet up with people either in a virtual space and host your own kind of book club conversation or post-session debrief. Or heck, you could also say, oh, I want to actually go down to whatever, name your restaurant of choice, and line up for everyone's got the double vax to be able to go and have an in-person gathering to actually connect with other human beings in the in-person reality, if you wish. So we're hoping that folks will really use it as an opportunity for growth and insight and also connection.
Great. Well, while I still am thinking about it, because sometimes you get lost in these conversations during these lives. So if anyone does have questions, feel free to post them in the chat for David and I. But we're going to kind of close with a couple more minutes because we're just past that 20-minute slot. So we're really excited about Conflict Resolution Day. We're looking forward to all the speakers, the resources, the conversation you're going to have with Priya, the book, and being able to talk about this. Is there any advice other than coming to the conference that you would give leaders?
Sure. Well, when it's coming around this art of gathering, what's your purpose for a meeting? Do you know the purpose? And just, because we meet, no, that's not a good enough purpose, right? So be really clear about your purpose. And one of the things that I have done with so many different groups is that when you're having a discussion, here it is. One quick tip, right? Be clear. Is this an information item that you're sharing with people? Or is this a discussion item that you want to engage? Or is it a decision-making item? Because if you're not clear when you're putting something on the agenda, you just invite confusion and conflict and resistance, right? And then when it's a decision item, who owns the decision? And there's so many folks that talk like they're going to do consensus, but they actually don't mean consensus. They want to have a good discussion. They want input. And at the end of the day, because they're the CEO or the project manager or whatever, they have the responsibility to make a judgment call. They're consulting, they're getting the wisdom of the group, and then they need to make a call. And that call, everyone might be totally supportive of it. It might look like consensus, but it's not. It's consultation with the decision maker. If it is consensus, well then sure, do consensus. But that means if the group doesn't agree, and you need to process longer. And there's very few venues in my experience that actually should be doing consensus. If you're on a board of directors, you're going to be doing consensus or voting to make a policy change. But within most work teams, you're not doing consensus. You're doing consultation. And if you're unclear about those things, oh my goodness, you start confusing expectations, and then people start becoming resentful because I thought, you're doing something that I didn't agree with. And, you unintentionally gave away power. You were unclear. You misled people unintentionally, right? So is it an info? Is it a discussion? Or is it a decision? Be clear on your agenda, and then be clear on the decision-making around the kind of decision that you're doing. Is it a consensus, or is it a consultative process where you're just getting input so you can make the best decision possible?
Oh, well, that's great. I think that's really good information to think of. And as I'm thinking about meetings and plans and agendas, definitely want to add something like that into my mind as well. And lastly, is there any other additional resources you would offer or suggest to people? I mean, your advice was great.
Oh my goodness. Well, hey, if you want to go onto the ADRM website, and you can find a little bit more about who we are as an organization. And also there's links there to the conference. And so that's a great resource. Hey, Google Priya Parker, and you'll find a whole bunch of wonderful stuff that she's doing. If you want to really prime the pump, go get inspired the way I initially got inspired, and listen to Brene Brown's podcast with her. She's now been on 3 times with Brene Brown, which is pretty phenomenal to get that level of exposure with someone who has like literally 10 million followers. So those would be a couple of suggestions.
Great. Well, thank you, David, so much for your time in joining us. We appreciate the conversation, and we're looking forward to the ADRM's conference in October.
Yeah, October 20th. Thanks so much, Kristine.
Thanks. So anyone else that wants to register, we've put the link in the chat. Learn more about ADRM and their event. Feel free to click. And anyone who wants to connect with David, feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn. And once again, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us in our live for today. And Coffee Ring Marketing for helping us with this production. Have a great day, everyone.